Hello and welcome to Catch a Lift Coach's Corner. I am Cal lead coach Melissa Luke, and my guest host this week is the president and founder of the Catch a Lift Fund, Lynn Coughlin. Lynn, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. More especially, we are so proud and honored today to have Chris's partner, Erin King, here with us today. He served with Chris, and this is a very special day for us to touch a little on Chris after 10 years of Catch a Lift.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I'm super happy to be here. So honored. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin, for joining us today.
Yeah,
Let's
definitely.
jump right into it because I know there's a lot of stuff we want to talk about. Erin, why don't we start with, you're an Army veteran. Why did you join the Army? Why did you want to? What was the time like for you?
Yeah, so for me, I was in high school when 9/11 happened. And so I think probably for a lot of people who served kind of in that generation, that was probably a big motivating factor for a lot of us. And it was for me, just during that time and looking back at that. And it's wild to think that was almost 20 years ago.
I know.
But just seeing how that affected our country and people wanting to take action like myself. And so, I just had this vision that I wanted to serve. I wanted to give back. I wanted to not take for granted all these freedoms and these privileges and these blessings that I enjoyed. And so for me, just being in the Army was something that I wanted to do, just to kind of do my part to protect that and to serve. And so I joined when I was 17 in 2004. And kind of like I already said, to me, it didn't really matter what I did. I just kind of wanted to be in the Army. But I had a little bit of family history there guiding me as well. So both of my grandfathers rather, served in the military. My dad retired from the Army. My older brother, Ronnie, was in the Navy. And so there's a little bit of a family legacy there. And of course, the 9/11 events were big motivating factors for me.
Yeah, like you said, that definitely, I know for myself, when it happened, I was a sophomore in high school, and that single-handedly, I knew I was going to join the Army, but it was from that point on, like, not only am I going to join, but, the idea was to go to war.
Right.
So how did you end up in intelligence? Because I know that's not where you started out.
Right. Yeah. And so I hinted at this before. I just wanted to be in the Army. I didn't really care what I wanted to do. And unfortunately, the recruiters picked up on that, so they just gave me a supply job, where they didn't have to give me any kind of bonus or whatever. And so I ended up doing supply, and I was a reservist because I joined when I was 17, so I hadn't even graduated high school yet. And so between my junior and senior year of high school, I went off to my basic training, and I came back as a reservist doing my senior year of high school, just doing supply for a local MI battalion, so a military intelligence battalion. And so that's what I did for a few years. But then our battalion was getting deployed to Afghanistan, and it was MI, and they were short on human intelligence collectors. And so pretty much right away, I was like, well, that's what I want to do. Like, I don't forget the supply stuff, like logistics and So Intel sounded really cool. And so fortunately, they were willing to let me reclass. And so they sent me to Camp Williams, Utah. So I was a student at Texas A&M at the time, again, in my reserve capacity. But in the spring of 2009, so January through March of 2009, I went to Utah and I reclassed to become a human intelligence collector. And of course, I wasn't in school anymore. I kind of postponed school for a while. And that's how I ended up in MI was basically the battalion was shorthanded. Okay. And we needed more collectors. And that's also incidentally how I ended up meeting Chris and how he and I became teammates, because some of the folks watching may realize he's from the East Coast. He's from Baltimore. Our unit was a reserve unit in Texas, but we were augmented from people from Fort Meade there in Maryland, which is how we got Chris with us. Okay. But another unit in Arizona, a unit in Hawaii, that might have been it. But a few MI battalions from across the nation, joined in to support our deployment. And so that's how I ended up meeting Chris as well. Yeah.
So can you explain to us, because you became Chris's teammates, first, what is a collector? And then how do collectors work on teams? What does that team component mean?
Yeah. So first, this isn't like some machismo, like braggadocious thing. Like if I tell you I have to kill you, it's not like that at all. It's just like literally it's been 10 years. I really don't know the lines as far as like what's classified, what's, just open source common knowledge. So I'm going to tread lightly here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But there's certainly some stuff I know that I can reveal, which is so a human intelligence collector is just that, we support the intel community. So gathering intelligence on, whatever the objective or the other side is, but we use humans as our sources, so, like we're aware of the NSA and they do signal intelligence, and intercepting of phone calls or email traffic or something like that. Right. With human intelligence, it's just like the name implies, right? We use people to get our intelligence. And usually that's one of two jobs. It's either interrogations or it's source operations. And so all Army intel collectors, human intel collectors would be trained in those two fields, interrogations and source operations. Chris and I, our particular mission was in source operations, which is cool. Like that's more fun than the interrogations. And from my experience, seems a little bit more useful and meaningful. I think the CIA and maybe those kind of deep level better interrogation intel. At the Army level, I don't know that we really get a whole lot of great stuff, but doing the source operations, which is basically just interacting with the locals in the community and using them in various means, leverage our access to them to get intel is how we operated, and so that's what we did in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you and Chris, were sent somewhere very remote in Afghanistan. Can you kind of talk to us about that and, how that all happened and a bit about where you went?
Sure. Yeah. So we went to a place called Kop Tangi. And so COP stands for a combat outpost. Many of the viewers probably aware that, but opposed to a FOB, which maybe most people, particularly civilians, have heard of as a FOB, like a forward operating base. Which would be really large, and have several thousand people stationed at it. But the COP, the combat outpost, it was really small. So it was a single infantry company that was assigned to this COP, and that was kind of their battle area, their area of operations. And then we were attached to this infantry company to provide that intel support for the valley. So Tangi Valley is where we were. It was in Wardak province of Afghanistan. I think I forgot your question. You just want me to tell you about where we went?
What was the mission? What was the mission for you guys to get sent to that? Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so that COP, like I said, it was pretty small. It was also new. It had only been established in that valley a few months before we arrived. And so it was, we were kind of a part of helping to kind of build up and, the actual like facility, the tents and the billeting and all that. Right. And then of course, understanding the area because it had been kind of a dark spot intelligence wise for us. And so we were a part of some of that early intelligence on the area. And so the mission was to support the infantry company that was there, provide them with intel support, on maybe some high value targets, some IED network chains, suppliers and manufacturers of IEDs and stuff like that in the area. And most of our mission, really seemed to be focused on that IED side because that was one of the things that made that valley valuable to the Army was, it was a valley that had a highway that was connecting two different provinces. And so it was a strategic spot to move, people and traffic and supplies through. But without a military presence there, it was also an extremely dangerous spot. And there were IEDs all over. And so, to the extent that I'm aware, I think that's probably why the Army decided to build a combat outpost there was to get better, presence and intel in that valley so that we could actually use it as that means of getting around, because Afghanistan is very mountainous. So apart from the helicopters, there's not a lot that you can do unless you have good control of these, roadways and stuff like that. And so I think that was kind of a primary focus of the big mission there.
Right. You described the area once as kind of like the Wild West. Do you want to talk on that for a minute and what it was like in that valley there?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of already hinted at that before, where it was kind of brand new when we got there. They hadn't had been there long. And so, Chris and I would just kind of joke that it was kind of like the Wild West and there was nothing around except for dirt and ammo, and our unit armed us to the teeth. It was ridiculous. The amount of weaponry they gave us, much more than we could ever use. absurd. But it was kind of part of the, I don't know, just the atmosphere in the field, just kind of feeling like it was kind of cool, kind of fun. But yeah, so it was, the valley, like I said, is really mountainous. And so it's mountainous on either side. And so there's a valley. So, in between is where the villages were. There was a river running through there. And so that was a pretty good water source for, farming activities. And I remember the locals, it seemed like they grew a lot of onions, and I remember quite a few like apple orchards.
Really?
Maybe what they, produced there. And so having that river run through the valley, made it pretty green, pretty lush, and a good source of, livelihood and income for the locals. Right. So in terms of this Wild West thing, I think that just mostly had to do with, the presence being the military presence there being pretty new, and us being on the forefront of helping to establish that. And just again, I mean, the mountains and the dirt, or you're down in the valley where it was kind of lush and green, and they had crops growing. But it just felt like we felt very autonomous, which was in a way, kind of good, kind of fun. Moved away from like like our command's flagpole at a different fob somewhere else. And so we got to have, kind of a decent amount of autonomy about like how our schedule looked and what types of missions we, try to prioritize, and how we supported that local infantry company. So.
Would you tell us about when Chris was killed, Erin?
Yeah. So, we weren't there for very long. We arrived at the COP, I think probably in late October of 2009. And then Chris was killed November 13th of 2009. So, I mean, it was very short. In fact, I arrived there a few days before Chris, because he had to stay behind and get licensed to drive an MRAP at Bagram. And so, Chris might have only been there about 10 days or so. I don't really remember exactly, but it was a pretty short time. And so we knew from the get-go when we got there, it was pretty evident as soon as we arrived, like, wow, like this place is littered with IEDs. I mean, just daily, there were various IED events, all around the valley. And fortunately, most of those events were, more or less harmless. There weren't a lot of casualties, but they would be discovered, or they would be detonated, or whatnot. And so we knew, like, wow, this is a real thing. Like IEDs are serious in this place. And so, like I said, it became pretty obvious that was going to be probably a big focus of our intel collection, is determining who's involved in making these, where are the materials coming from, and then where are they going, so that we can avoid them. And so, on that note, I feel like as far as, how Chris was killed, that story really starts the night before. We had a way of observing that an IED was being buried in a certain part of the valley. I don't know, I guess I won't go into much about the decisions that were made and how that was made as far as how we interacted. But basically the decision was, we'll just continue to observe and watch where these individuals go. And so then we kind of marked this house that they went into that night. And so, the infantry company that was there, they had platoons that would regularly go out on patrols. It was kind of just presence patrols, and it was a lot of intel collecting, and they'd establish contacts in the various villages and just get a feeling for who lives here, what are they doing, are they sympathetic to like the Taliban insurgent cause, or are they sympathetic to an American presence to bring like security or democracy or whatever. And so the infantry is constantly just kind of going out and having regularly scheduled patrols with no, like combat mission, just having a presence, right? And so that infantry company had a patrol like that already scheduled to go on the east side of the valley. Just let's make some contacts in this village. Let's figure out who's here. Let's talk to the locals, see how that can help us accomplish our mission. But then this happened the night before, right? We observed that these people were bearing this IED. And so that meant the following morning, that infantry company also spun up a separate patrol that was going to go to the west side of the valley to go to this particular house where we saw the people, after they were bearing this IED. And so Chris and I talked about it that morning. probably prayed about it, but I'm not exactly sure. But we definitely talked a long time about it. Like, what are we going to do? Because we were just a 2-person team. It was just me and him. And so we could either both go together like we typically would, battle buddies, and
Right.
I have each other's, six, we have each other's back, and we go on the same patrol. But that would mean that one of the platoons would not have the intel support from us. And so we decided that morning, let's go ahead and split up. And he would go to the west. He'd go to that house where we observed the people bearing the IED go. And I was going to go on the regularly scheduled patrol to the east. And that was the decision. And looking back, it's pretty interesting, because Chris and I had never split up on a patrol before. And after Chris was killed on this morning, and my new teammate Angelo joined me, and Angelo and I served, the next 11 months in that COP. Like, he and I never split up on a patrol or a mission. It was the one time in the whole year that, my teammate and I decided let's go separate ways. And so Chris's patrol set out a little earlier than ours, about a half hour earlier or so. And so on the way to this house, there was a different IED that got the truck that he was in. Actually, so there were 2 Marines in that truck. One was driving and one was the gunner. They both sustained pretty severe injuries. There was a former Navy SEAL who was there in a civilian capacity doing some contract work, and he was actually killed in that truck as well. An interpreter was killed, and then Chris was killed. And so my patrol never ended up happening. As soon as we hear that, they're hit. And by the way, that was in a different location than we observed. We obviously knew to avoid the spot.
Right.
The IED being buried, but along the way, there's a different IED we were unaware of that got their truck. And so, we start hearing all the radio chatter, and the observation posts up in the mountains can see and hear what's going on. And so they start communicating with us at the base about what's happening. So of course my patrol gets scrapped, and we respond, as like security, kind of a QRF, quick reaction force, to go where Chris's patrol was. And, at this point, we don't really know, like we're all pretty ignorant as to the extent of the damage and what has happened. All we knew is an IED was off and the truck was hit, and I remember on the way, just praying that everybody's all right. It's going to be okay. It's not a big deal. And that we're going to be fine. Some of the guys at a different observation post got there first. And so they're the ones who really responded to the battle damage and called in the medevacs and could start communicating what was going on. And I remember, hearing over the radio chatter as they're calling in for the medevac, they're identifying the individuals with, the first initial, the last name, and the last 4 of their social. And so I hear C, Charlie, and then Chris's last 4 of his social called as needing the medevac. And it didn't sound good. And so I remember that's when it really kind of first hit me, like, this is real. It kind of seems surreal at that point, and a lot of like just kind of denial that, I know this happened, but it's going to be all right. But when I could tell that Chris was part of the serious casualties that were getting flown out of there, it was really troubling. And I remember again on our way there, just praying and praying and praying that everything's going to be all right. And so we arrive, and in hindsight, for me, I'm very grateful that I wasn't there earlier, because I didn't see Chris or any of the other guys that were hit. They were all flown out before the platoon I was with arrived. And so we showed up, to provide security, to clean up, to get sensitive materials, and then head on home. And so we were really, that was a whole day event. That Chris was killed pretty early in the morning. And we were out there all day, and we came back after sundown. And the whole time I didn't know. All I knew was Chris and the other guys were flown out, but we didn't know anybody's status. And so I remember being, hopeful and I don't know if encourage is the right word, but at least hopeful and maybe denial that like still it's going to be okay. But we got back to the base that night, and we checked in with the commander right away. And he's the one who broke the news to me that Chris, in fact, had passed. And that's when I started crying. That's when it really hit me. That's when I couldn't deny it anymore. It all became very real, at that point. And so, to the best of my, recollection, that's kind of the events of that entire day about how all that unfolded and happened.
Erin, I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us, because it's been 10 years and we're not allowed at first to ask anything because it was a classified mission. And then out of respect for you and those that were on that mission, I know oftentimes it's quite hard to share so many details. So thank you for that, because as hard as it is to hear, it's like a gift 10 years later, to hear those details. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course, Lynn. And, it's kind of standard policy anytime that there's a casualty that the military does like a communication blackout so that stuff like this doesn't get leaked to families and stuff before it can be officially disclosed. But I remember thinking I didn't know you at the time, and I'm so grateful we've become good friends in the years since, but I didn't know you then. But I remember after a certain amount of time had passed, several days, I did get permission from our command to call your parents. I really wanted to talk to your parents. And so I was able to call them and talk to them. And I don't remember, honestly, I was still overseas. And I don't remember what all I could say or couldn't say, but I remember it being very good. And for me, for healing, I don't know if it was for them. It might've been, the hearing from me.
Of course. No, of course it is.
And say, just talk. I mean, I don't remember what we talked about. A lot of those days after the day itself, November 13th isn't much of a blur at all. Like I remember a lot of those details. The week after is very much a blur, and how that all unfolded afterwards. But yeah, I mean, of course, Lynn, and thank you for letting me be here to share this. And of course, I'm an open book. So, whatever I can.
My family we're blessed that now we have this friendship and the connection with your family. It means the world to us. I can't thank you enough. I know my parents are just so grateful.
Yeah, likewise. We are too. We love y'all to death. So it's been good. Thanks, Lynn.
Yes, thank you for sharing that with us, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember most about Chris?
Yeah, there's, oh my goodness, there's so much. But I feel like what I remember most about Chris, probably two things in particular that stand out. One would just be how, I guess I'll talk about his love for fitness first. And that's kind of why we're here today with Catch a Lift, right? And so, yeah, he just, he loved fitness so much. And so there's a lot of examples I can give of that. But I first met Chris, like I mentioned earlier in the show. He wasn't part of my original unit. He was brought in with other guys from the East Coast to help us. And so it was probably April of 2009, right after I had come home from being reclassed as an intelligence collector myself. It was probably April of 2009 when I met him first. If not, it would have been May for sure, because that's when our battalion started going through the mobilization process. Okay. And getting all these support personnel. And so Chris would have been assigned to my battalion sometime in the spring of 2009. And that's when I would have met him. And probably by May, if not June, I think is when we would have been pegged as teammates, so specifically we'd start training together as a team. Yep. Actually with two other individuals, Daniel and Raina, and if any of them are watching, I want to make sure that, they got that shout out, because we were initially a team of four. And if it comes there, I can explain what happened. But the four of us were assigned as teammates. And so we did all of our training together because we're going to be working together side by side, for that deployment. And so all throughout the while, right, Chris is, I'm starting to get to know him. And like I said, it's apparent that fitness was really important to him. And because every single day, every day he would find some way to challenge himself or better yet, like have a competition with the people that were around him, and try to best them in whatever kind of physical activity. And so I have a few fun stories, about that. I guess one of them being, at some point I learned more about Chris's past and that he had played college football and lacrosse. And then he went overseas in Europe and he played professional, American style football in Europe. And that he was a fullback, right? So, of course we can picture a fullback like big and strong and burly and just like stout, and that was Chris. He was built. He wasn't long. He wasn't lean. He was sturdy. He was a And so one day he challenges me to a foot race. I'm like, come on, dude, like you got to kick me. I'm pretty athletic, and I'm long and I'm lean and I've got long legs and I'm pretty fast. Like, Chris, come on, man.
You're pretty sure you got this in the bag.
I'm pretty sure that I got it. Like, I know that when it comes to physical competition, you know, we're lifting weights, you know, we're doing deadlifts. Sure. Like I can't hang with Chris, but a foot race, come on, man. And so, and I don't remember how far it would have been, maybe 40, 50 yards, not very long. But like, of course, I got you, Chris. So we do this. And so, you know, we set off, someone says, get, you know, we start sprinting and I jump out to this quick lead, you know, because, you know, I got these long legs. And so, you know, I'm out ahead. But the longer this race goes, and it wasn't a very long race, it was a sprint. But Chris just starts closing that ground. And I remember, like, we're getting close to this finish line. Me all of a sudden. And then we get to the end and, like, you know, he beats me by 1 or 2 steps. And by the way, so, you know, most people watching don't know this. I'm 23 at the time as well. And Chris is 43. So, yeah, he's solid, like, oak tree of a man. He's 43 years old. I'm long and lean and I'm 23.
Yeah.
You know, even then. So, just stuff like that, you know, he was always looking for ways to compete with himself. And I think that's one of the things that make him unique. You know, he didn't need somebody else to compete with. He could challenge himself, which is difficult. You know, it's hard to find that intrinsic motivation to do that. But of course, if people were around, he was happy to challenge them as well. And so that's, you know, one of the stories that I, you know, I remember fondly. And just other things, you know, like there was a pretty tight group of us, you know, as the months progressed before we headed overseas, but we're doing several months of pre-mobilization training. There became a pretty tight knit group of guys that would hang out together. And it was always Chris to initiate, hey, I know we did our training today, but let's take it to another level. So like it's after, you know, supper time chow and people are ready to like unwind, like take a shower, you know, relax, watch a movie. And Chris is, you know, making us all gear up, throw on our flak vest, put on a rucksack, you know, put on combat boots and go out on a run, you know? And so, but it was always Chris, you know, like saying like, you know, what are y'all doing sitting around relaxing? Like, we got to go, this is serious. You know, we're going to war. Let's get ready. And so he was always going that extra mile. And for part of that pre-mob training, we were at Fort Lewis. And so Fort Lewis, of all the places, had excellent facilities. You know, a lot of this stuff like Camp Bullis or Fort Irwin, California, or Fort Hunter Liggett, California. I mean, like, we were sleeping in tents in the sticks. It was gross. But Fort Lewis was nice, and they had great facilities, and they had this wonderful gym. And so, again, Chris was, you know, leading us out there every day to the gym to do, you know, whatever the workout of the day was, you know, the squats and the leg exercises or the shoulders and the back. And so it was always Chris kind of taking charge and, like, you know, refining people's technique and making sure that you've got correct form so that you're working the correct muscles, you know. And so again, one of those stories right at Fort Lewis was they also had a racquetball court. And I had been playing racquetball with my brothers and sisters and my dad since high school, maybe even junior high. And I love racquetball, and I took a racquetball course in college. And so this is one of my favorite sports. And so I don't remember if it was me or Chris, maybe it was even the other guys. I don't know, but someone challenged the other to a racquetball game. And so Chris and I get into that room together. And Lynn, you might know, I don't know if Chris had ever played racquetball before.
I don't think so.
Again, it's not his kind of sport, you know.
It's not his kind of sport.
He's not a Roger Federer type build, you know. He's a full. And so again, I don't remember. Maybe he already knew how to play. Maybe I had to explain the rules.
I know he played tennis with my mom whenever she wanted, but he wasn't like a tennis player. Mm-hmm. So he definitely wasn't a racquetball player.
Right. Yeah, sure. So we get into the racquetball court, and of course, anybody who knows, right, these have glass, like the back wall is glass. And so anybody can watch. And so again, the guys are watching us play. And again, I don't remember the outcome of the game. I don't know if I won or he won, but that's not the point. The point was afterwards when we got out, our buddy Jason Frantum, you know, he like nudged Chris, elbowed him in the ribs, and he's like, "Man, you're twinkle toes in there," and he was, you know, like he's again, it's just this such a dichotomy in this, dichotomy, right? This of these opposites that Chris could embody, you know, the strong man, but he's out there on the racquetball court, and he's light-footed, feather-footed, up on his toes, just moving around, swinging this, and he could hack it, you know. And so Jason made a point of, you know, "Hey, Chris, you look like twinkle toes." And so, of course, you know, that kind of became, I guess, a moniker that we could assign to him every now and then. So yeah, I think that his love for fitness was evident, but also just how diverse and all-encompassing that was, and how it was when it came to fitness. It didn't matter the type of challenge. Like he was ready to face it and tackle it and impress with it, so.
That's so cool. Yeah. I feel like, I've gotten to hear all these incredible stories of Chris through the years, and, he has taken on for me almost like a legend type symbol in my mind. And so, to hear this stuff, it's so great, thank you, Erin.
Sure. Mm-hmm. One other thing, Melissa, I'm sorry, I know you have another question, but one other thing, as far as fitness too, I also remember like he could not stand Army food. And it wasn't the taste, but it was just that like, this is just like calories, fat. And he just kind of like, we got to get some nutritious stuff in there. So he would constantly complain about, military chow and all the, the junk in there. And one of the things I guess maybe more related to me is my wife, my girlfriend at the time, Mari. She's an incredible cook, and she's amazing in the kitchen, and she bakes all the time, right? And so she would constantly mail me packages of cookies and brownies and fudge and all that stuff, right? And of course I'd always offer to share it with Chris, and I really don't remember if he took me up on it or not, but I do remember he'd always say like, "Come on, man! Like, what is she doing here?" Like, get her to throw some protein powder into these, and then I'll eat these cookies, but what's she doing to you, man? And so he would give me a hard time about, my girlfriend said to me, these baked goods, but he's like, but throw some protein powder in there and it'll be all right.
Yeah, he was definitely a nutrition narc. I have his last giant protein powder container, I think. It was huge. Put it in everything, yeah.
What was it like to be Chris's teammate?
Mm-hmm. So for being his teammate, man, it was amazing. It was fun. There was never a dull moment. I guess this kind of ties into your second question. I did mention there were 2 points I had to make about, what I remember about him. And the first was his love for fitness, but the second was just that there was never a dull moment. Like nothing was ever just plain and boring and dull or mundane with Chris. We'd find ourselves in those circumstances. Again, anybody in the military knows it's a weight, environment. There's plenty of time to be bored.
Yep.
Sit around in line for hours doing nothing. But being Chris's teammate, I was always hanging out with him. So if we're standing in line to get new gear for our deployment or to get the latest, vaccination or whatever, we'd be sitting around for hours, but there was always some fun game to play, or silly, stupid debates to be had. And Chris, he just had a way of taking anything and turning it into a controversy that he want to argue with about, So I don't know, Lynn, if he had any background like on a debate team in high school or something, but that was just second nature to him. He didn't have to believe this stuff. He'd take his stance and stand that ground and induce an argument about nothing, something so stupid, but he turned it into fun conversation is the point.
He did. He kept things lively, he engaged people all the time, and he really kept it fun as much as he believed in what he believed. He really kept it open for everyone to be able to contribute. There was no right or wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly don't ever want to give the impression during this talk that it was just like me and Chris this whole time, right? So sure, he and I were teammates, but there's all kinds of people. There's the entire battalion, just going through all these processes together. And so, just whoever's around, Chris was that person. He was just a magnet. And so everybody wanted to be, jump in on these conversations and chime in and give some feedback, And so, again, some examples of that. This one did happen to be just me and Chris, but there was one time that he and I had to pull some late night, like CQ, charge of quarters duty. It basically just means like we're sitting at the desk, paying attention to what's going on in this building and writing down, all the phone calls that happen. So whatever, right? We're doing CQ duty together. Again, it's one of those, it's long, like 4 hours. You've got nothing to do but sit and talk.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so Chris, like he has this. Melissa, help me out here. Is it Stars and Stripes? Is that the paper?
Yeah, Stars and Stripes. Yep.
So he's got the Stars and Stripes paper, right? And he's reading this article about a private and a specialist who are getting busted because they're supposed to be, I guess they serve some quartermaster capacity, and they're supposed to have delivered the mail. And so I don't know where this was happening, some stateside base or overseas, I don't know. But the Stars and Stripes is reporting on these two enlisted folk who are supposed to be delivering the mail. But because that takes work and effort, they would take the mail and they like toss it in the dumpster and they go hang out or something, you know. So their command finds out about this, you know, they get punished, and Stars and Stripes runs an article about it, right? And so Chris and I are sitting there on CQ. He reads this story and he tells me about it, and this is Chris's reaction. Good for them. Like, no, that's so wrong. Like, that's
hilarious. Good for them.
The context of the stuff this is just emphatic. Like, no, good for them. Like, who needs that mail? And so we go on about how we're all narcissists, you know, and like, you know, we're so in love with ourselves and we're not that important. And like, why shouldn't we, you know, this private and the specialist shirk their job and just go have fun? Like, that's what they should be doing. And so, of course, you know, and I don't know if Chris believed that or not. He did always give me a hard time for all the letters and packages I got. He was constantly ribbing me.
He did say that. He'd say, "Don't you dare write a letter. That's ridiculous. I have things to do. You know, tell the family don't send mail." Yeah.
And Lynn, of course, you would know this so better than me. But it was, you know, he was always just, you know, he was always such a mystery. So what I, to this day, don't really know is if he really believes that stuff, like if he really didn't want you to send him letters, or if he really thought like mail.
No, he really meant it.
Or if it was just him, you know, playing that card, like he's just gonna be, you know, go against the grain because that's.
Yeah, no, he really meant it. He really meant it. You couldn't give him a gift, anything. You know what though, Erin, I did want to ask you. I do not have a record, which I would give anything to find, of what his PRs were on like a deadlift, his bench. I feel like I had him somewhere and I cannot for the life of me find him. I would love to know those PRs. Wouldn't they be fun, Melissa, to have for catch a lift?
Absolutely.
As like PRs, you know, to hit.
Yeah.
I have his last workout, but I don't have his PRs.
Right. Yeah, and I have no idea either. You know, and unfortunately, the Army's not going to have any records like that because for us, you know, the only official PT records would be push-ups in 2 minutes, sit-ups in 2 minutes, and then the 2-mile run. And those are the three metrics that they used.
Yeah, I know he broke those at Fort Meade. He broke those records when he enlisted. But other than that, but it would have been fun. It would have been fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So as far as, you know, so something like that, I mean, I don't know, like maybe we could find somehow. And
I'm definitely gonna figure that out.
Yeah, the push-ups and the sit-ups and the 2-mile run.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Coughlin name and what it means to you, Erin, and how it's really become a part of your family. Yeah,
sure. So again, I think as y'all have seen a little bit, you know, because of what happened to Chris, and because my wife is this incredible human being, you know, she was really the one behind you know, our decision to actively travel out to the East Coast, because we live here in Texas. But to travel out to the East Coast, usually in early November, around the anniversary of Chris's death, and go visit him at Arlington, and then meet up with the Coughlin family. And honestly, if I was not married to Mari, I don't know that I would have ever done that. You know, I don't know. I'd like to think that I would, but Mari is super principled. And relationships are so important to her. And so, and she's also she's a mover and a shaker. She just makes things happen, you know? She doesn't just dream, like she acts on it. She's an entrepreneur, you know? And so she was like, just really the force behind, you know, it doesn't matter the cost or the time, like, let's go out there. This is important, you know? Yeah. And so, so that first anniversary, you know, it would have been November of 2010. We would have been back home from our deployment just about 2 months, because we got home in September of 2010. Okay. And yeah, Mari just was really intent that we need to go visit Chris. We need to go, you know, check in with his family in Baltimore. And so that's what we did. And so I remember that moment when I first met Lynn, when I met her parents, when I met, you know, the siblings and the nieces and nephews, and all the family was out there, and a lot of, you know, the military guys, the guys and gals were out there. and we had, a little like memorial service on the anniversary around his tombstone there in Arlington. But that just kicked off, a new tradition for us. And so we've not been back every year since. It's been 10 years. But the only times that we haven't been back, I think, is when Mari was pregnant or we had a brand new baby, so we've got 3 kids now. And most of those years out of those 10 years, we made a trip out east to visit Chris at Arlington and to visit the Coughlins. And so that means like we've gotten to become close to the Coughlin family. And Lynn, help me out here. Did y'all launch Catch a Lift in 2010 or was that 2011?
Yes, 2010.
Okay.
And after the first time you were here, I got keep this in Chris's flag case. Maury sent me the most beautiful note and just beautiful prayers in there. And this means so much. I keep it in Chris's flag box always. But it was 2010. So he died in November 2019. And we started the whole concept February 2010.
February 2010. Okay, wow. So I was still overseas and you were already thinking about Catch a Lift and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
See, and I remember us kind of celebrating the launch of it on one of those anniversaries, but I couldn't remember if it was the first anniversary or the second. So you're saying it was 2010.
Well, it was definitely the first, but we were so new, right?
Sure.
We were still it's a website, and it was much different then. But you've been there every part of the way with us.
Yeah, and so back to your question, Melissa, what the Coughlin name means to us is obviously, for me, it instantly makes me think of Chris, and of course, everybody's familiar with these memorial bracelets. And this is my third one, by the way. The other 2, have fallen apart. But I wear my memorial bracelet every day. And it's just a reminder for me that Chris isn't around anymore. But when he was here, he lived life to the absolute fullest. And so every single morning I put this on my wrist. And I remember that like my time is scarce. It's finite. It's numbered. And so while I have these opportunities, like how much of a shame would that be for me to squander them? When had Chris still been around, he'd still be doing so many incredible things, to benefit and to love and to influence other people. And so, putting this bracelet on every morning, it is a reminder that I've got today, and I need to make the most of it. And then the Coughlin family, Lynn and everybody else have done so much to make that so much more meaningful, because it became evident like, oh man, Chris isn't the only Coughlin who makes the most of every moment. Like here's this family, they lose their
my
love.
gosh, yes.
And instead of just kind of moving forward and coping with it and mourning and grieving and getting over it, they said, hey, like, how can we continue to honor Chris? How can we serve his legacy? How can we promote what he stood for? And, and so they take this opportunity to say, let's serve others, let's continue to pay this forward, and let's reach out into other veterans' lives, particularly wounded veterans, and speaking to them and give them life. And so, again, I didn't know the Coughlin family until we went out there and visited, but it became so evident that their love, that their service, that their willingness to sacrifice and serve, I mean, it's incredible. It's flooring.
It is.
And so, has done all this stuff and become what it's become. And now we've got thousands of veterans, who are benefiting from this. And so anyways, it just became really evident to me and Mari that like this Coughlin family is pretty cool. Like they're amazing people. And like I said, we're so honored to have become, really good friends through these years. And so I mentioned, that we have 3 kids, and we have 2 daughters, a 5-year-old Elizabeth and a 3-year-old Juliet. And then here in April, our first son was born. Excuse me. And so, we found out, I think actually it was Veterans Day. It was Veterans Day of 2019. We found out we were having a boy. So he was 20 weeks, in utero, and then we had our sonogram. We're like, hey, we're having a boy, and this was Veterans Day. And so, that means Mari and I start talking about, well, what are we going to name him? And we had a few ideas that we're tossing around. And I think Mari sat on this name for a few weeks, but then she told me, she's like, I think we should name him Coughlin. And and she said she'd been thinking about it, but she didn't want to tell me because she didn't think that I would like it. And she was right. When she first told me, I was like, that's weird. Like, I don't like that. But she was talking about how she likes last names for first names for boys, examples like Harrison and Campbell. These are names like boys' names that she likes. And so Coughlin obviously fits that bill. And of course, it's incredibly meaningful to us. And so, I don't know, after a couple of days, that kind of sank in. I was like, I do like that. And so it was a few weeks later, we called Lynn's parents, and we talked to Dave and Tony, and we asked them if they'd be all right with us using their family name to name our son after them. And of course they were honored, and they gave us that blessing. I remember talking to Mr. Coughlin, to Dave, and he said, what did he say? He said, yeah, that's fine, but it's kind of a stupid name for a boy.
Oh my gosh.
We're like, well, yeah, but I mean, we don't think so. We like it, and y'all are pretty special to us, so we're good. And so the conversation was something like that. So anyways, that's what we decided. And so April 1st, 2020, our son is born, and we christened him Coughlin. And so that's what we've got now. So we've got Elizabeth and Juliet and baby Coughlin. And
oh, that's so wonderful.
That's
That's so wonderful.
yeah,
It's really wonderful. I love that Chris lives on through, an amazing family, a Christian family like yours. That means so much to us. And then that Chris lives on through Ketchaliff. Was hard to do, the 10-year the show like this, because we never wanted to make the focus about Chris, because we felt that's how he was, always for others. Right. But I also feel that he stands for all the veterans and the military that couldn't come home and sacrificed, and their names are forgotten in the big picture, say, or their families can't do something of this nature. So I feel he really represents, thousands and thousands of men and women. And now he represents your son, which is really amazing.
Sure. Well, and to be clear, right, and for the record, of course, our son is named in honor of Chris, but also for you as well, for the whole family, because again, it's so Mari and I, and as you've said, Lynn, like our faith means so much to us, and so God obviously calls us to serve and to love and to sacrifice. Christ perfected that. And so, and then you and, your family and Chris, y'all model that so well, right? And so we're all imperfect and we all need grace. But y'all do such a tremendous job of really embodying and living up these values. And so for us, it was just, ultimately it was a really easy decision. They're like, yeah, of course our son's going to be Coughlin. Why wouldn't he? Like, these are values, that selfless service, that sacrifice, that love, that selflessness is just something that is so important to us. It's so important to our faith. It's something that we're commanded to do. We want all of our kids to do that. And we thought, what better way than to give our son this name, this legacy that he could really look up to, and it'd be just yet another, inspiration for how he can serve, not just like Chris did, but like y'all continue to do through Ketchaliff. It's just so cool.
Thank you so
much. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of loop back. I know we're starting to run a bit long here, but this is so important to loop back to. Erin, you explained it out perfectly, and I think what I've seen, and obviously any veteran in this program, Lynn took pain and turned it into true purpose. Her and the entire Coughlin family with the Ketchaliff Fund. I would like to just take a couple minutes, and Lynn, can you touch on for us the impact this last 10 years has made for veterans nationwide who were combat wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Oh, absolutely. So Chris always would say that whenever there was pain, you had to turn it to purpose. You didn't want pain to just sit idle and not be for a reason. So those words really resonated with me when I was personally trying to deal with the grief, because I was so close to him, and our entire family. It was a huge loss for us as the youngest, brother's son out of 5 children. So I really focused on that pain to purpose. And we moved that into the Coughlin Fund, where we now, when we first started, 1, 2, 3, 4 veterans, but now we're touching thousands of lives. And what we're doing is giving back hope to say, I can take back my health, I can take back my injury, I can move on and heal through something that we all know and need, which is fitness. And it's fitness physically, mentally, and spiritually. You must be strong in all 3 of those areas in your life to move on, to change, to make a difference in your life, your family's life, your children's life, whatever you decide to do. So when we did that with our veterans, when they came back, still to this day, there's no program like this where we're saying you are an individual. You decide how you want to get fit mentally, physically, and spiritually. And that's what we're going to help you do. And we embrace it. We try to treat every man and woman as an individual as best we can. We work tirelessly at that. We believe in it. We're very transparent as far as we have a limited staff or limited revenue, but we're going to give you the very best we can with what we have. And to push that out has been one of the greatest honors of my life and my family's life. And I hope that we can continue to do that. We hold it in the highest regard. It's a deep, deep passion of ours. And our heart is so open to the men and women that give back to us their heart, their hope, their trust. And we'll never, never, as hard as we can, work at that and never let you down as best we can. So changing those veterans' lives is a gift to us that we honor. It's been remarkable.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Erin. I just want to, again, thank you both. I want to, thank you, Lynn, for joining me today and, sharing this time with Erin. It was a great honor for me to be here with both of you and, talk about Chris and share these reflections. Truly an honor. So thank you both for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. That'll be it for this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Thank you all for joining us. We will be back again live next Wednesday at 1 Eastern with another episode. I want to thank you again, Erin. Thank you. Thank your family. Thank you for your time, for your wonderful spirit. Thank you, everyone who tuned in today. Thank you, Lynn, for everything. Thank you for waking me up to live so many years ago. I want to thank the entire Coughlin family for continuing to pay it forward and put that pain into purpose. We also would like to thank ID Technologies for their continued support of the Catch a Lift website, Landing Zone, and this podcast. None of this would be possible without their additional support. Thank you, Henry Pomper, for streaming us today. And thank you to all the Catch a Lift veteran athletes. Lynn?
Yeah. And very, very special thanks from my family and from myself, Erin, to you. We love you. Our hearts are full. And you make every day worthwhile and something to live up for. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, we love you too. We love y'all so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Until next week, stay Cal strong and keep it real.